In the studio with me, Bishop Council Nedd II, founding member of Project 21, chairman of In God We Trust, author of the new book, Does America Hate God? Faith Under Fire. Council Nedd II with David Almasi?
Yes.
Am I saying that right? Okay. Bishop Nedd, welcome back.
Thanks for having me on again.
Thanks for joining us. I wanted to just get an understanding of the world from your point of view.
Okay.
Because I studied.
That sounds a little set-up-ish, but okay.
No, well, it is. But I studied American history, and not formally. I don't have a PhD in history or anything like that. But and in '97 we sold a business in Atlanta and moved to Vermont, and the house that we bought in Vermont had a 20-volume set. In fact, I think that one of the volumes is in here someplace. 20-volume set of the complete collected writings of Thomas Jefferson, only been published once in history, in 1909 on the anniversary of his leaving the White House, the 100th anniversary. And I didn't have anything to do, so I read that for the next year. And out of that came two books, What Would Jefferson Do? And Unequal Protection. And there was a lot of amazing stuff that Jefferson had to say about religion that... for example, he talked about how America is not a Christian nation, explicitly.
Right.
In 1824 to Major John Cartwright, he said, "Our revolution commenced on more favorable ground than the foundation of English or biblical law. It presented us an album on which we were free to write what we pleased. We had no occasion to search into musty records, to hunt up royal parchments, or to investigate the laws and institutions of a semi-barbarous ancestry. We appealed to those of nature and found them engraved on our hearts." He talked about nature's God a lot, including in the Declaration of Independence. It was nature's God. It was not the Christian God.
Right.
And he talks about...
And some would argue the Masonic God. Yes.
Absolutely. And he even talked about how Patrick Henry and some of the other, really outspoken fundamentalist Christians were constantly trying to get him to talk about the Christian God, and he would literally scratch out, in fact, in the first draft of the Declaration of Independence, nature's God was scratched out. John Adams wrote in Christian God. Jefferson scratched it out and turned it back into the God of nature. How do you respond to the, I can give you probably 20 or 30 examples of Jefferson
I'm sure you
saying,
probably could.
He's not a Christian. America's not Christian. George Washington was not a Christian. George Washington laughed at the Christians. He thought it was hysterical how they were trying to constantly get him to pronounce Christianity. How is my understanding of American history so different from yours? I spent some time with your book. And
Did you like the foreword?
I didn't read the foreword. I'm sorry. But, you're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Holy cow. I wrote the foreword?
It was from our first interview, actually.
It's a transcription.
It's a transcript of our very first interview.
How cool is that? Okay. So anyhow, tell me, what did you say to Jefferson?
Well, so what I'd say to Jefferson and what I would say probably was that the argument, the debates, and the discussions that you saw going on then at the founding of this nation, where people were saying, well, no, scratch this, put that, and this back and forth, fundamentally, I don't think it's any different than what we see going on here today in America. In all honesty, you've got people of faith who feel strongly about certain things. You have people who are strongly secular, who have strong feelings about things. It happened to be that Thomas Jefferson was one of the great writers, and he was tasked with writing a lot of the documents. And so, but if his sense and flavor comes through in this.
But if the government is to do the secular stuff,
right,
then shouldn't, whether somebody is a bishop in a church or whether somebody's a talk show host, shouldn't we all agree that government should not be mixing with religion?
I don't know that government should be mixing with religion per se, but I don't necessarily believe that God's necessarily excluded from the equation. There's never been a society on this planet that I know of that didn't acknowledge some sort of higher being for its creation, for its providence or whatever, and I think America's no different than that.
Yeah, well, there's a long history of people trying to figure out how things, what's that thing up in the sky? It's, it must be a chariot being drawn by 6 horses we can't see, with Mr. Zeus or Odin or whatever, trying to explain things. But that...
What the God looks like, in my opinion, isn't as important the fact that it's acknowledged. Something greater than ourselves, greater than you and I sitting here in this room, has some sort of hand in what's going on.
In your book, you've got all these stories of persecutions of Christians.
Yes.
I'm kind of speechless here.
It actually happens. Christians are sometimes persecuted.
Yeah, I understand.
I lived in the Middle East. I lived in the Persian Gulf. I know Christians are sometimes persecuted. It actually does happen.
Well, it's not
fiction.
That's a different part of the world. About the United States, the title of your book is "Does America Hate God?" Does America hate God?
No, America does not hate God, but I think that there is a trend in that direction. I think there's segments of society that are trying to remove
hate a deity.
Well, there's certainly people that don't acknowledge him. I pose the question. There's certainly people that don't acknowledge him. There's certainly people that, well, I mean, honestly, I'm a Christian, but there have been times when I've been angry at God. I don't hate God, but there have been certainly times when I'm angry at him, and that's certainly valid.
Yeah, but the people who, the agnostics, the atheists, the skeptics, or the people who are not Christian and who just,
right.
They have a different notion of a creator or whatever. Shouldn't we, like in the Treaty of Tripoli, shouldn't we say, as this country was not established on the Christian faith or any other faith,
right.
We welcome all faiths. Shouldn't that be our position? I mean, what I get from reading your book is that you think that our government and Christianity are essentially one and the same, and I would strongly disagree with that.
I don't think that our nation was founded void of something internally inside of the founders that had a belief in God. I don't think there was a void. I don't think there was a separation there.
Well, you're familiar with deism and the deist beliefs of most of those guys. I mean, that was not the Bronze Age God with the long hair who says yes.
But I think it's incredibly easy for us to sit here 200 and however many years later and say, well, they didn't really feel that way. They were deists, or they were this, or they were that.
My question is, does it matter how they felt?
I don't think it matters. I honestly don't think it matters.
So then if we're going to construct a country right now where government works, isn't it incumbent on us to keep religious enthusiasts, whether they're Mr. Modi's Hindus or whether they're your fundamentalist Christians, to keep them out of government?
You mean specifically exclude Christians from government?
No, exclude Christian policy from government policymaking.
Maybe. I don't necessarily agree with that because it's hard to say, well, let me check who I fundamentally am at the door. Whether you're a deist, whether you're an atheist, or whether you're a Christian, you can't take off that coat so easily and just hang it up over here and say, well, I'm going to put all this aside, all of my fundamental beliefs. There's parents.
Do you think that there are people who are not Christians who are out to get America?
Oh, yes.
Because of religion?
I think in large part because of religion. Like, for instance, I've lived in the Middle East, and I've got a lot of Muslim friends. So you've got individuals who, I have friends, and one of their criticisms of America is that our faith isn't strong enough. Then you hear criticisms from other people that's saying, well, you guys are Christians, therefore you're X, Y, and Z. Right. It spans the full spectrum.
Right.
I think answering your question, America's in a no-win situation. No matter what we do, no matter what happens, there's someone's going to be calling us out and unhappy with what we're doing. Whether they think we're entirely too secular, we allow too much crazy stuff on TV, or just the mere fact that there's too many Christians running the place.
Right. Yeah, it seems that there might be a dispute there. Fascinating stuff. Bishop Council Nedd, rather than debating you, I wanted to try and understand your worldview. I'm still not there, but we'll try
I
it again.
understand that.
Okay, Bishop Council Nedd II, founding member of Project 21, chairman of In God We Trust, and author of the new book, Does America Hate God? Faith Under Fire. Thanks so much for dropping by.
Thanks for having me on again. Great.